Have you ever wondered, what if a thunderstorm doesn't just bring rain and lightning, but something else entirely? In today's video, you'll join me as we dive into 3 terrifying true stories, 3 seemingly harmless moments on a rainy night that opened the door to ultimate horror. A young boy left alone during a storm, only to discover a stranger stepping through the back door, calling him son. A teenager waking up during a blackout to find a woman under his bed, smiling with yellow teeth and wild eyes. A couple on a weekend getaway in the woods, who, when the thunder struck, saw strangers standing still in the rain, not knocking, just watching. Think you're brave enough? Stay till the end. And if you love chilling stories like these, dark memories buried deep in the shadows, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. It's the best way to help me bring you more nightmares, more real, more haunting. And if you've already subscribed, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is the only light in the dark tales we're about to enter. The rain won't last forever, but what you hear tonight might follow you for the rest of your life. Be careful. They're still looking for you. It was a gray August night, thick with the damp scent of an approaching storm. At the end of a tree-lined street stood a pale gray 2-story house, quietly tucked away. The dim yellow porch lights cast just enough glow to illuminate the path strewn with fallen leaves. Inside the house, a boy named Ryan, 13 years old, bright eyes, messy black hair, was living out a dream most kids only fantasize about, a night home alone. His parents had just left town to attend an overnight wedding. Before leaving, his mother had given him a list of instructions in the sternest voice imaginable. Do not open the door, don't invite anyone over, don't go outside, and lock every door before you go to bed. Ryan nodded like a robot, but inside he was thrilled. This was the night he'd been waiting for all summer, a night of absolute freedom. No one to nag him about loud music, no one to make him turn off the lights to sleep, no one to scold him for blasting the Xbox volume. The rain had started falling, and to Ryan, it only made everything more perfect. By around 8 o'clock, the rain came down in sheets, thunder shaking the window panes like a war drum. Ryan sat cross-legged on the basement couch, gripping a controller, playing Call of Duty with his best friend Cody through a pair of cheap headphones. The basement was his favorite place. The big screen TV his dad loved, the Bose sound system, and something else. A strange but comforting sense that this was his domain. The explosions in the game blended with the storm's booming thunder, creating a surreal kind of symphony. Ryan had nearly lost track of time until the doorbell rang. The sound, sharp, dry, and utterly out of place, froze him. His heart thudded harder in his chest. For a second, he thought, "Are Mom and Dad back early?" But he shook the thought off immediately. They had keys. They would never ring the bell. "Someone's at the door," Ryan muttered into the mic. "I should go check it out." Cody chuckled. "Go see who it is. Just don't get murdered." Ryan scrambled up from the basement and stepped into the hallway. Outside, lightning lit up the shadows. He approached the front door cautiously, pressed his ear against it, and asked, "Who is it?" A man's voice replied from the other side, hoarse and exhausted. I'm sorry. I need to use a phone. I got caught in the rain." Ryan shivered. That voice, unfamiliar, unkind, out of place. It wasn't a neighbor. It wasn't some passerby. And he had made a mistake. He had revealed that someone was inside the house. Worse still, only one person. A boy. Alone. In the storm. Ryan backed away from the door as if he had just touched something ice cold. He didn't say another word, didn't open the door, just quietly turned and hurried down the stairs back to the basement. His mind spun with frantic theories. Who was that stranger? Why was he standing outside the house in the middle of a storm? And more importantly, had he left? He returned to his seat, pretending to resume the game, but his hands were shaking too hard to hold the controller. Cody was still saying something through the headset, but Ryan could no longer hear. He was silent, heart pounding in his ears. Then the doorbell rang again. This time, it was like a blow to the chest. He flinched, head whipping toward the stairs, eyes locked on the ceiling as if he could see through the wood to the shadow waiting outside. He pulled off his headset, gasping, then whispered, "He's still out there." Silently, Ryan crawled off the couch, tiptoeing toward the small window in the corner of the basement, a narrow pane at ground level that looked out onto the backyard. Outside, the rain still poured in heavy sheets, lightning flashing in blinding bursts. No one was there, not a single soul. A strong gust slammed into the glass, making it tremble. Ryan blinked, turned around, and that's when he saw the sliding glass door to the backyard was ajar. His heart stopped. That door was supposed to be locked. He remembered clearly. He had pulled the handle down and latched it shut himself. But now it stood open, not fully, just a few inches, as if someone had slipped through and let it close behind them. In that moment, Ryan could hear nothing but his breathing. The air around him felt thick, suffocating. Then came a sound, a soft one, barely audible, like footsteps pressing down on wet wooden floorboards. He turned his head. A man, tall, soaking wet from the rain, was standing at the bottom of the basement stairs. His silhouette was cast against the floor as the lightning lit up the room. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He just stood there, head tilted slightly, as if examining a new toy. Ryan didn't scream. He couldn't. He threw down his headset and sprinted toward the basement office, the only room that could be locked from the inside. His hand had just turned the bolt when the doorknob behind him began to rattle violently. Bang! Bang! The pounding was relentless, accompanied by a furious, snarling voice. "Open the door! Open the goddamn door, you little shit! I know you're in there!" Ryan backed away, spine pressed against the icy wall, legs trembling so badly he could barely stay upright. Then the man began slamming harder, like he was trying to rip the door off its hinges. His voice twisted into a warped, frenzied howl. The wood groaned, the hinges rattled. In the dark, Ryan knew. This wasn't a night of freedom anymore. This was a fight to survive. The doorknob jerked violently one more time, then stopped. Silence. No more pounding. No more shouting. Only the sound of rain. And Ryan's ragged, painful breathing in the darkened room. He stood frozen, throat dry, his hands clenched tightly around the baseball bat he had grabbed from the corner of the room. He strained to hear, but there was only the rain pounding the roof, distant thunder, and the pounding of his own heart. A few seconds passed, or maybe minutes, he couldn't tell, before a soft knock echoed through the room. Not banging, just a gentle tapping, as if the person on the other side had completely changed demeanor. "Kid," the voice said, now softer, but with a forced calm that was deeply unsettling. "I just need to use the phone. I got lost. I'm cold." Ryan didn't respond. He knew this psychological game. He'd seen the movies. And more than anything, his instincts were screaming, "Don't trust him. Don't open the door." He scanned the small room. There were two exits. One led back into the basement living area, where the man was, and the other, a small door leading into the garage. That was his only escape route. He crept toward it, slowly turning the knob. His heart stopped when the hinges let out a loud creak into the rainy night. Luckily, there was nothing out there. The garage was empty. The outer door, heavy and old, was slightly ajar. Ryan slipped into the garage and made a beeline for the main door. On the other side of the wall, he could hear footsteps. The man was moving. He twisted the handle and pushed the garage door open. It groaned with a long, high-pitched screech. Wind and rain burst in, icy cold. Ryan ducked down, squeezed through the half-open gap, his feet landing in a freezing puddle as he darted out into the downpour. He ran, didn't look back, didn't stop. His feet pounded the slick grass, cutting through the side path that led to his neighbor's house. Julian, a man he used to play with as a kid. He rang the doorbell like mad, banging on the door, shouting, "Help me! Someone's in my house!" The lights inside flicked on. Julian opened the door, and Ryan nearly collapsed into his arms. "There's a man! In my house! He got inside!" Julian pulled Ryan in, slammed the door shut, and yelled for his wife to grab the phone. Police arrived in under 10 minutes. They quietly surrounded the house, using the garage door to enter. Ryan, still trembling, sat on the neighbor's sofa, clutching the hot cocoa Julian's wife had handed him. His hands hadn't stopped shaking. Then, through the window, he saw it. A tall figure being led out in handcuffs, drenched from head to toe. The man didn't look at Ryan, but Ryan couldn't look away. That man, the one who tried to break in, who pleaded through the rain, was smiling. A small smile, but one Ryan would never forget. His name was John McCarty. According to the police, he had a history of trespassing, had been arrested for vagrancy, drunkenness, and showed signs of mental instability, but no one had ever seen him do anything serious. Until that night. Ryan sat at the police station, wrapped in a thin blanket, recounting every detail to an officer whose eyes were sunken from sleepless nights. He answered carefully, slowly, trying to keep his voice calm, but inside, the image of that man refused to fade. The smile, the eyes, and the way he had whispered, "I know you're in there." He was caught in the act, rifling through the living room, his feet still soaked, the stench of rain and body odor mixing into something foul enough to make anyone recoil upon entering. When the cuffs snapped around his wrists, he only smiled and told the police, "This is my house. That boy is my son. He's lying." No one believed him, but the words alone were enough to send a chill down Ryan's spine. A few weeks later, the preliminary hearing was held. He was convicted of breaking, making threats, and trespassing, but he was only sentenced to a few years, less if granted parole. And that, despite Ryan returning to games, school, and his friends, meant he never truly felt safe again. The house still stood at the end of that quiet street. Ryan's family didn't move, but every time the rain began to fall, every time the doorbell rang, or even just a soft knock on the window, Ryan froze. Because now, he knew, not everyone who knocks is looking for help. And some people, once they've found your house, they might come back, not to make a call, but to finish what they didn't get to do. That night, the storm rolled in like an angry beast. Wind howled through the cracks of the door, and rain lashed against the windows in violent bursts, like claws scratching to get in. Inside a small house in the quiet suburbs, 17-year-old Kyle curled up in bed, phone in hand, the glow of the screen the only light casting across his face in the flickering dark. It was past 4 a.m. The whole house was asleep. His mom, his grandparents, leaving only the sound of the storm and the wind, like someone's breath wandering outside. Kyle liked rainy nights. Their isolating nature made him feel safer. But tonight, the storm carried something else, something heavier. Office. And then, pop, the power went out. No Wi-Fi, no fan. Just an oppressive silence, pierced only by the wind and the darkness seeping into every corner of the house. Kyle sighed, placing his phone on the nightstand. The battery was fine, but there was no signal. He turned over, trying to sleep, but a scratchy dryness in his throat kept rest at bay. He picked up his phone again, turned on the flashlight, and decided to go to the kitchen for a glass of water before heading back to bed. The door creaked open, and the hallway beyond was pitch black, swallowing the beam of his flashlight. Kyle shivered. He pulled his robe tighter and walked softly toward the kitchen. The closer he got, the colder the air became. When he reached the kitchen, he froze. The back door, the sliding one that opened to the patio, was ajar, just slightly, but enough to let the cold, damp air rush in, carrying with it the thick smell of wet earth. He slammed the door shut and locked it. Grandpa must have forgotten to close it, Kyle muttered, but the reassurance did nothing to calm the unease blooming in his chest. Back in his room, he set the glass of water on the table, pulled a chair in front of the door, checked the closet, then lay back down on the bed. He left the flashlight on, a lonely beacon in an ocean of black. But no matter what he did, the feeling remained, as if someone was waiting in the dark, and he had just gotten into bed. Kyle lay on his side, eyes wide open in the dark, the flashlight on the nightstand casting a faint yellow glow onto the ceiling. His mind was a tangled mess of thoughts, from why the back door had been open to the lingering chill in the air. He closed his eyes, trying to force himself to sleep, but he couldn't. Something was wrong. Not in the house, right in his room. That feeling, like there was someone else in the room. Another pair of eyes, another breath. Then he heard it. Creak. A faint sound, almost like the spring under his bed being compressed, as if someone was moving, very slowly, beneath him. Kyle went rigid. He didn't dare breathe. His ears strained, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might shatter his ribs. He wondered, maybe I imagined it. Just the wind? Or some noise from the old house? But then it came again, clearer this time. A soft shuffle, like fingernails dragging across wooden floorboards. And then he remembered. He hadn't checked under the bed. The air seemed to thicken. He turned slightly, slowly leaned over the edge and, with a trembling hand, angled the flashlight down beneath. And he saw it. A face. Pale, gaunt, with bloodshot eyes that looked like they hadn't closed in days, greasy hair, and a smile twisted into something grotesque. It was a woman, or something that had once been a woman, lying sideways beneath the bed, eyes wide and unblinking, staring directly at him. She smiled. A silent grin at first, stretching wider into a grotesque leer. And then she laughed. A screeching owl-like laugh, high-pitched and distorted, like a warped cassette tape being chewed by an old player. Kyle screamed, leapt off the bed. The chair blocking the door was knocked over as he flung it open, nearly tripping as he sprinted into the hallway. He slammed his fist on his grandparents' door, screaming louder than he ever had. "Someone's in my room! There's someone under my bed!" His grandfather opened the door, holding a gun Kyle didn't even know he owned. Together, they rushed down the hallway. Kyle stayed close behind him, shaking. The bedroom door was still open. The flashlight was still glowing on the nightstand. But under the bed, no one. Kyle started to say something when his bedroom window flew open. A white blur dove out into the stormy night. His grandfather raised the gun and fired a shot into the air, the sound cracking through the damp atmosphere like a thunderclap. They stood there, gasping for breath. The scent of gunpowder, the smell of rain, and a chilling emptiness filled the room. She had been there. No one could deny it. But who was she? And how had she gotten in? The answer still hid in the shadows. And from that moment on, Kyle knew his home would never truly feel safe again. That night, no one in the house slept. Kyle sat curled up in the living room, eyes locked on the window, where the rain kept hammering against the glass. His grandfather had called the police, but no one came because the entire area was experiencing a blackout. Communications were down, and the storm made any movement nearly impossible. Only the sound of rain remained, and a silence sharp as needles. Kyle's mother kept asking what had happened, but he could only respond with one sentence. There was someone in my room, under my bed. His grandfather placed the gun on the coffee table, eyes never leaving the front door. If she comes back, he said quietly, we'll be ready. But deep down, Kyle knew. She wasn't coming back. She had never left. Around 3 in the morning, the power flickered back on. The lights blinked a few times, then glowed dimly. The whole house seemed to exhale in relief, but for Kyle, the light only made one thing clearer. The house was no longer a home. Then came a sound, a faint creaking, like floorboards groaning, from the ceiling. Everyone looked at each other. Kyle's grandfather stood, hand reaching for the gun. The sound came again, slow, steady, like someone crawling on hands and knees across the attic floor. The attic. No one ever went up there. The entrance was right above the hallway near Kyle's room, a small square wooden hatch. Kyle, stay behind me, his grandfather said, motioning for him to step back. He pulled a chair over, climbed up, and slowly pushed the attic hatch open. A waft of dust and something damp and suffocating spilled down. He shone his flashlight upward. Silence. Then a face appeared. Just behind the edge of the attic hatch, a pair of wide white eyes stared down, a cracked grin stretching across a pale face. It was her matted hair, emaciated body, and unblinking eyes locked directly onto Kyle's grandfather. A scream burst from Kyle's grandmother behind them. His grandfather flinched, lost his balance, and fell off the chair, the gun skidding across the floor. She dropped down, like an animal, limbs contorted but unnaturally fast. Panic exploded. Kyle grabbed his mother's hand, pulling her toward the bedroom. His grandfather scrambled on the floor, snatched the gun, turned around. No one was there. No footsteps, no breathing, no doors creaking. Just the rain, falling steadily, like a whispered reminder. She had been there. And maybe she still was. An unidentified woman appearing in the middle of a storm, laughing in the dark, crawling down from the ceiling like a living nightmare. But what chilled Kyle the most wasn't her presence. It was the final look they shared. She knew his face, and she was searching for someone, or something. And Kyle had a crystal clear feeling. This wasn't over. The next day, the sky was an unnaturally clear blue, as if the storm from the night before had never happened. But for Kyle, nothing was the same. He hadn't slept. He couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, that face returned, ghostly pale, twisted in a crooked grin, with eyes blood red like they were weeping rust. The police finally arrived. They searched the attic, inspected every corner of the house, found nothing. No signs of forced entry, no strange footprints, no evidence that she had ever existed. Only Kyle, his mother, his grandparents, and a fear that clung like a tear in reality itself. He tried to recount everything in as much detail as possible, but even saying the words made it feel too real to be a hallucination, too irrational to be real. "There was a woman under the bed," he repeated again and again. "She crawled down from the ceiling." No one outside the family believed it. A week later, his mother had new locks installed on every window. They mounted security cameras, bought a guard dog, and no one in the house slept when the wind picked up. What was once a peaceful home now felt like a fragile fortress. A few nights later, Kyle opened his phone to check the footage from one of the newly installed backyard cameras. The screen showed a short clip, taken during another rainy night. A single figure standing motionless in a shadowed corner, only half her face visible, smiling, unblinking. The camera had not recorded her arrival, nor her departure. Just one frame, long enough for Kyle to understand. She had never left. He deleted the video, locked the doors, and left the lights on all night. Because there are things, once they've seen you, once they've crawled out of the dark, they always remember the way back. In August, Cass and her boyfriend Brandon drove nearly 3 hours to reach his family's mobile cabin in the northern mountains. A place far from the city, far from car horns, a place where darkness was truly dark. No street lights, no neighbors, just trees, wind, and a stillness so deep it was unsettling. Brandon called it luxury camping. A 600-square-foot tiny home, 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, a functioning bathroom, enough to live, but still cut off from everything. Cass wasn't sure she liked it. She was used to the city's sounds, its lights. But Brandon was excited, and she didn't want to ruin the weekend getaway he'd been planning for a month. The first day passed peacefully. They grilled, went off-roading, and even practiced archery behind the cabin. But by Saturday evening, the sky began to change. Gray clouds rolled in from the distance, thick and inky. The air turned suddenly cold. They packed up their gear quickly, ducked inside, just in time for the storm to hit. Rain pounded the metal roof, the sound like war drums. Cass and Brandon sat watching an old DVD, trying to ignore the thunder shaking the world outside. But then, during a flash of blinding lightning, they heard it. A voice, very faint, very distant, echoing from deep within the forest behind the house. Cass looked up. "Did you hear that?" Brandon stood, stepped toward the glass door. Another lightning flash lit up the swaying trees, like giant hands reaching. This time, they heard it more clearly. A man's voice, not urgent, not crying for help, just calling. No clear words, no clear meaning, but unmistakably human. Cass gripped Brandon's hand tightly. "There's someone out there." He nodded slowly. They looked at each other and realized the scariest part wasn't that someone was in the woods. It was that this person stood in the rain, in the dead of night, calling, for no reason at all. Cass stood frozen, heart pounding in her chest. Brandon stared through the rain-streaked glass into the forest. Out there, the darkness felt alive, devouring everything just a few steps beyond the porch. But every time lightning split the sky, it lit up the woods, and in those moments, what they saw chilled them to the bone. A man standing still among the trees. No umbrella, no movement, no shouting, just standing there, staring straight at the cabin. Brandon instinctively stepped back, quickly locked the door, and pulled Cass inside. "Probably a hiker," he stammered, "or someone who got lost." "Then why isn't he calling for help?" Cass whispered. "Why is he just watching?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. They pulled the curtain shut, turned off the porch light. The cabin was now lit only by the dim glow of the kitchen bulb. Cass sat shivering on the sofa while Brandon retrieved his father's old rifle from under the bed. He'd never fired at anyone before, but his hands were steady now. Something primal kicked in. Either fight or be swallowed whole. Wind howled through cracks in the walls like a ghostly whistle. And then, footsteps. Not loud, not hurried, but unmistakably, someone was stepping onto the wooden porch. Cass clamped her hand over her mouth to stifle a scream. Brandon stood beside the door, gun ready, eyes locked on the doorknob, slowly turning. No knocking, no calling, just a faint scratching, like someone trying to unlock it with bare fingers. Silence closed in, then a sudden thump at the side of the house. Someone, or multiple people, were circling. Brandon whispered, "I'm going out." Lock the door behind me. If anything happens, crawl under the bed. Don't come out. Cass hesitated, then nodded. He opened the front door slowly, rifle raised, the beam from his headlamp cutting thin lines into the rain. Out there, no one. No more footsteps. No more voices. Brandon turned, sweeping the porch with light, and his heart nearly stopped. A face, deathly pale, pressed against the kitchen window, right where Cass was hiding behind the curtain. A loud bang echoed like thunder. Cass screamed. Brandon rushed inside, and the nightmare had only just begun. Brandon slammed the door shut, bolted it, and pulled Cass into the bedroom. "There's more of them," she screamed, tears streaming down her face. "I saw someone by the side window, too. They're surrounding the house." He nodded, gripping the rifle tightly. They turned off all the lights, leaving only a small candle flickering on the table. The mobile cabin now felt like a tin box in a sea of wind, fragile, breakable, and stalked from every direction. Cass curled up in a corner of the room while Brandon pressed his back against the wall near the door, listening. The rain seemed to recede, fading, then stopping altogether. An eerie stillness settled. Then, thud, thud, 2 loud knocks against the bedroom window. Brandon jolted and rushed to pull the curtain. No one there, just the glass, misted with rain. But when the candlelight reflected across it, they saw the wet imprints of hands all over the pane. 10, 20, too many to count. Outside, there were people. They weren't trying to break in. They didn't bang. They just watched. A psychological torture, silent but suffocating, like invisible hands around the neck. Brandon whispered, "They can't get in unless we open the door." Cass didn't answer, but her eyes locked onto the back door. No one had locked the back, the sliding door that opened onto the rear patio, where she'd seen the first figure in the woods. Brandon bolted for the kitchen, but it was too late. The door was open. Wind swept in, along with a figure standing right at the threshold. Tall, slender, soaked in white clothing, hair hanging loose, head bowed low. No scream, no warning. Brandon raised the gun. The figure looked up, eyes rolled back white, mouth stretched to the ears in a frozen grin. No emotion, no consciousness. Brandon pulled the trigger. The gunshot tore through the silence. The figure collapsed, but behind them, 2 more stepped in. 1 male, 1 female, not rushing, not speaking. Cass dragged Brandon back to the bedroom. They slammed the door, barricaded it with a chair and dresser. She panted, eyes fixed on the frame. From the gap under the door, a whisper crept in, soft, halting, like someone learning to speak. "We see you." Brandon backed away, rifle raised. They both had the same thought. If that door bursts open, no one will survive. Rain returned at dawn, like a blanket smothering all outside sounds. Brandon and Cass didn't remember when they drifted off. When they awoke, the sky was a dull gray, and the cabin was eerily still. They opened the bedroom door, still clutching the rifle. Step by step, they crept into the living room. No one. No trace of the pale figures from the night before. The sliding door was shut and locked from the inside, but the wooden floor was soaked. Something had indeed stepped inside. Cass spotted them first, small muddy footprints, long and narrow like a child's, trailing from the back door into the living room, and then disappearing. No return tracks, no signs of leaving. Brandon searched the entire cabin. No one, no blood, no bodies, nothing at all. Just the faint handprints on the glass doors, fading under daylight as if they had never been there. That afternoon, they packed up, locked the cabin, and drove away, without looking back. On the road, Cass looked at Brandon, her eyes swollen from sleeplessness. "We're never going back there, right?" Brandon didn't answer immediately, but he gripped the steering wheel tighter and nodded. A week later, they received a clip from the test-run camera system. At 3:14 a.m. during the storm, a figure appeared, white and motionless, standing before the front door, head tilted at an unnatural angle. No knock, just standing there, staring directly into the camera. Then, a message flickered on the screen, like a system glitch, though no one had programmed it. "We miss you." Cass deleted the video. Brandon took down the camera. But every time a storm rolls in and someone passes by the porch, they no longer dare open the door. Because some things, once they've found you, don't need to knock a second time. If you're still here, congratulations. You just survived 3 nightmares, 3 stormy nights, 3 dark corners of seemingly ordinary lives. But as you've seen, darkness doesn't ask permission. It just arrived, quietly, and it never truly leaves. If you found these stories fascinating, chilling, and goosebump-inducing, leave a like to let me know you want more. Which part haunted you the most? Drop a comment below. I read every single one, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you want to join me every week to uncover buried secrets, nameless ghosts, and true stories too terrifying to believe, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. Thank you for choosing to stay till the end. We'll meet again. In the nights no one dares to sleep, and in corners no one dares to look into. See you in the next video. But be careful. Someone might be watching with you. Good night. And don't forget to check under your bed